right, welcome everybody. We are about to get started. Let me just make sure this is closed there. All right, so we are going to get started and here we go. All right, so I have been struggling this past week with the whole capital gains thing, and so we'll go into that topic again. So last week we spoke about capital gains, and I said, you know what, it's not that bad. Like we should be able to handle it, right? And then I sat with it for a little bit longer, asked a couple of individuals within my network, and I was like, is this really a bad thing? And like, what am I missing in my calculations? And so I'm gonna bring up the spreadsheet that we did last week and talk about where I goofed up because I did F up a little bit on the calculations and on the thought process. And so now I'm just sitting with it, trying to figure out what else to do with it. Okay. So that's going to be one of the things that we talk about today. The next thing is talking about what does it actually mean when we look at an opportunity with a GPLP structure or like a percent shareholders equity. What does it actually mean when they say, hey, you know what, if you put in, X amount of dollars, will get you like a 5% equity share in the property or the business venture. Okay, so I'm going to answer that through a calculation today. So welcome everybody. My name is Hung Lu. I am with Cash Property and we are May the 6th already. So we're pretty much coming close to like mid-year here. So this 2024 is going by very, very fast. So let's, okay, so before you go and take my capital gains comments or take the analysis that I do on this LP stuff and be like, hey, I'm not going to invest in any LPs or GPs, or yeah, I'm going to go and do my next GP LP. Please go talk to another investor, talk to your accountants and lawyers, and make sure that it's the right move for you. Okay, so let's jump right in very quickly to the whole capital gains thing. Okay, and then we'll go into the calculation. So let me share with you my what do you call it? The spreadsheet that I used last week to go through the capital gains calculations. And if you have not seen that video, go back. It's just 1 week from today, and I will try to put that in the link as well. Okay, so what hit me when I was sitting with this is, we ran the calculations last week with like a million or like 1.5 million. But here's the situation though, like if we are long-term buy and hold investors, we're going to have a lot of capital gains. Okay. So potentially money that's going to be hit with this inclusion. So I reran my numbers thinking, okay, well, what if my capital gains is 500, like 5 million? What if it's higher than that? Okay, so if you're in a situation where you've got, you've been investing for a long time and you're not flipping, right? So you're like accumulating this capital gains. Here's the thing to keep in mind, okay? And this is where it hit me, that this increase in the inclusion rate to 66.67%, it's retroactive from the time we started with our buy and holds, with however long we've been sitting on our stocks or whatever, right? So this is what really made me pissed off, because it was like, wait a minute, it's not starting June 24th. It's starting retroactive from when I first bought my first property, which I still hold, from 20 years ago. So that means I'm paying a higher, like this extra 16.67% on every single year for the past 20 years on my property that I bought 20 years ago. And I'm like, but wait a minute, that's not right. Okay, so once I realized that it was retroactive, that was where my pain point started hurting me. Okay, it's not from the June 24th when they're going to bring this increase in. So if you're running the calculations, and let's just say you've been holding your properties for a long time and you're at the 5 million mark, the amount that you have to pay in the future, okay, is $500,000. Okay, so what that means to me is from June 24th, okay, if my capital gains is at the 5 million mark, automatically I would have to pay $500,000 more just from this increase in inclusion. Okay, that's crazy. And then so let's just say now I sit on this for years and years and years, and this grows to $7 million, okay? And now this inclusion rate has now bumped me up to 727,000. Okay, like that's just so crazy. Like it's penalizing people who've been in the market for a very long time because it's retroactive. Okay, so then okay, so let's go back to, okay, well, we can leave it at 700 because 7 million, because it's really just making you understand, like, okay, so let's just say now I've held on to this. Okay, and look, like the numbers have like grown so much that they don't even fit in the cells anymore. Okay, so this is now saying, okay, well, if I held on to the properties for 10 years, okay, which is, a buy and hold, like you really need to hold on to this long term. Okay, then it's about 1.67% per year over the horizon. Okay, so it's not as bad, but that means that I need to make sure that I'm making more than 2% per year on this property. Okay, and so if you watch the last video, as long as the property is making that, so from passive appreciation, from rental increases, from forced appreciation from the mortgage pay down, then it's okay. Like it's sort of a bit of a wash, okay? But if I'm doing this for generational wealth, okay, so I'm passing this on to my kids, I'm donating it to a charity at some point in my will. Okay, this definitely totally sucks, okay, because this whole retroactiveness really, like, it wouldn't be as bad if they said, okay, well, it's starting from this point in time, right? Like, so we're drawing a line in the sand. Okay, so if you are a fellow investor and you have some comment on this that I am completely missing, please let me know. I am open to hearing. Okay, so please connect with me on the QR code. I'm a small fish in this pool, right? So I have no influence, or at least I don't think I have any influence on what's going to happen with this whole capital gains coming in the future. So please let me know if I'm missing something. Okay, let's jump ship to the next calculation. Okay, like I'm pissed, but at the same time, I'm like, what can I do about it, right? Okay, so let's go into the next calculation here. This one, of course, is something that I need to get a handle on all the time because I'm looking at opportunities all the time. And really, this is to help fellow accredited investors make decisions on, should I invest in this opportunity for a certain percentage of an LP, or should I not invest in this opportunity? Okay, so I'm looking at opportunities all the time where I can put in my money, and it's like, okay, does this opportunity make sense? So let me make this bigger. So you should see another spreadsheet, okay, on here. So we're going to run this analysis. So all the greens are cells that you can change. Okay, so let's just say I'm looking at an opportunity, whether it's real estate or investing into a partnership in a business or anything like that. I'm going to get a 5% LP equity stake in it, or a percentage share in the shareholders. Okay, so I'm using those two terms interchangeably, but keep in mind that there's differences and nuances. Okay, but it's really to allow me to say, okay, if I'm going to get a 5% stake in it, Does it actually make sense? And is it worth my time? Okay, so let's run through this. So let's just say that the opportunity is worth about $2 million. Okay, so I can increase this up or down. The loan to value. So whether I'm buying into a business or buying into a property, we're going to be able to get a loan. And so in this opportunity, I'm looking at a 90%. Okay. And so once I'm done through this explanation, I'll go in and make some adjustments to it because I do want to, some of the business opportunities do not allow you to go to 90%. Like you're looking at maybe a 60%, 65% loan to value. So you want to be aware of that, or it might be looking at your loan to construction or like a loan to build. So you want to be cognizant of that as well. Okay. So on 2 million, 90% loan to value, we're going to be going to get a loan for 1.8. If we get the loan approved, it's at 6% interest rate. We're going to amortize it over 30 years. And this part here about what month we're starting is to allow me to calculate the principal pay down. And this is important because in real estate, you always want to be camping. Okay, so in my brain, okay, I want to look at cash flow, let's see, appreciation and mortgage pay down. So that's the camping strategy that I always use. Okay. So I want those three things. And so this particular number here is just saying, okay, what month am I starting to calculate for a 12-month period for the mortgage pay down? So the interest only payment. So sometimes when we start off, we look at to just get in on the opportunity, we will look at only doing interest only payments. If we're doing interest only payments, then there is no mortgage pay down. So that comes into effect for that 1 year period. Okay. So I always run this analysis saying, okay, well, if there's no interest payments, then that's going to affect my return as an investor. Okay. So now I'm going to go into the income expenses. So regardless if it's an investment property or a business opportunity, there's always some sort of income. There's always going to be an expense. Now, in real estate, the expense ratio is around, 30 to maybe 40%. For some of the hotels and campgrounds that I'm running, like looking at, those expenses are way higher, right? And the same thing with businesses because you have staff, like full-time, part-time staff all the time. So those expenses will be a lot higher. Okay. So, and those expenses may be closer to like 60, 70%, which is totally insane. Okay. So now let's go into this part here. So now we've got the NOI, which is just your income minus your expenses. Now, this number does not include debt servicing. So once you get into calculating your debt servicing, this is where things really pop up. Because a lot of the opportunities I get presented with are saying, hey, Huong, you know what? Come into this opportunity. We'll give you 5%, 10% of the GP. But here's the thing, though. They don't take into consideration that it's negative cash flowing. Okay, so look at this. So I have a formula in here that just basically says, okay, every single month, our debt servicing is going to be, in this case, close to $11,000. Okay, that means our debt servicing for the year is $130,000. Okay, if we're only making a net operating income, our NOI is only $94,000, but we have to pay out 130, we're negative cash flowing. Okay. This is not a good opportunity. Okay. Automatically, this is not a good opportunity. Okay. So now, does it ever make sense to buy into negative cash flow? Usually not. Okay. But there are times, like if you're land banking, if you're into some other creative strategies, it may make sense to be negative cash flowing. Okay. But usually you don't want to be in a negative cash flow. So here we're saying that there's a 3% passive appreciation. We're not forcing the appreciation here. So this is passive. So you will, like, if you know your market, if you know the industry that you're investing in, then you'll get an idea, an educated, good guess of what your appreciation is going to be. So you put that number in here. Okay, so I've got that to 1 decimal place now. Okay, so the mortgage pay down is a calculation that's in here. So basically saying that if this is not interest only payment, so that means that we've got the traditional bank loan from up here at, you know, the 30% amortization and 6% interest. And I'm calculating in this case, in the first year, my mortgage pay down is going to be about $24,000. Okay. Which means I'm actually going to be taking away $2,000 a year. Okay. This is because the accumulation of your cash flow, your mortgage pay down, and your appreciation, the camping, is what's going to give me my 2,000. Okay. Now you might be saying, well, wait a minute, Hung, your negative $35,000 in cash flow isn't enough to cover your mortgage pay down. You're absolutely correct on that. But you've got 3% appreciation, okay, year per year, okay, on this 2 million. Okay, that's where that positive number is coming from, because you've got that 3% appreciation. Okay, which is why I always say, hey, if you can get into a market that has appreciation over a market that has no appreciation, okay, take the market that has appreciation. Even though it's gravy, even though you can't count on it, even though it may not exist, okay? If you know that there's a chance of appreciation over a place that has no appreciation, take the place with appreciation. Okay, so here you are taking away $2,000 a year. Not a great return, okay, but at least it's positive. Okay, so now that you understand this spreadsheet, so keep in mind that, so now I'm going to talk about the yellow text box here. So these are my notes, okay? So this is a calculation in time, like it's a point in time, meaning that it's not going to calculate for 5 years or 10 years or something, right? So keep in mind that this 2,000 return is a point in time. And it's dependent on so many things. Like all the green is my input numbers. So as you can see, it's dependent on all these numbers that I put in, okay? So it's really just like a point in time. Now, this also does not take into all the creative type of financing that we can do. Meaning, okay, is there a vendor take back? Is there a second mortgage? Is there an assumable mortgage? Is there, you know, any other type of creativeness that we can do for this opportunity? Okay, it includes none of that stuff. Okay, so let's just play around with this and then we'll talk about some of the other considerations here. So I'm going to get 5%. So now let's just say I'm looking at an opportunity where it's only a 65% loan to value. Okay, so now I'm just going to increase this a little bit here. Okay, so if it's a 5% takeaway, so that's my equity that I'm going to get in as being part of the LPGP on the LP side. So now the loan that we're going to get is 1.3. The interest rate is normal. Okay, so now I'm going to decrease the amortization here to 15. Usually on a business opportunity, they want a shorter amortization. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the first year again. It makes sense to look at the first few years as just a way to get my head around the numbers, because keep in mind that your principal pay down in the first few years is going to be the least. As time goes on, as you're paying down more of the principal, then your interest portion goes down. So then you're paying more principal down as the years go on, right? So like it's that whole graph, which I don't have here, that it's not a constant number going down, but it's sort of like it's a gradual decrease of your interest payments versus an increase in your principal. I'll see if I can find a graph to show that. Okay, so this is not interest only. Okay, so now the in the expense, I'm going to increase this to 50% on the expenses. The interest income, I'm going to put 250,000 here. Okay, so that means our NOI has gone up. Our cash flow is 6,000. So it's actually gone down quite a bit. And so even though the loan to value has gone down, and so we're getting a lower mortgage. Okay, so it's because we're getting a lower mortgage that our payments have gone down. Okay, and so our return, our cash flow has gone down. Our negative cash flow has gone down, which is good. Okay, so in this, we would actually be making more money as an investor coming in. So now if the appreciation is 0, okay, so then that's where the appreciation plays out. Okay, so if I make the appreciation 0%, then I'm taking away $2,600 a year. Okay, so this is almost like, okay, if I invest in a business and there's no appreciation, it actually works out to be about the same as if I went into a real estate opportunity that had a 3% appreciation, and we were able to get a higher loan to value on our mortgage. Okay, so that's an interesting point to take away. Okay, so now if the income is higher, so usually on a business, this is service income. So like we're doing a professional service, like in the car wash business that I'm doing, or like if it's a hotel. Okay, so that would be the income. So now the cash flow is higher, significantly higher, because our mortgage is lower. The expenses are higher. So let's go to a 75% expense. This is crazy, like to have a 75% expense ratio. So at this point, it does not make sense. So this is not a good opportunity. Okay, so as you can, so I don't know if you notice that, but I have a formula in here that says, hey, if my debt servicing ratio is higher than my NOI, so my 1-year debt servicing payments is higher than my NOI, then this pops up saying it's not a good opportunity. Okay, so this would not be a good opportunity. And then my 0% appreciation. So I'm still at, that's interesting. So the difference to go from a 50% expense ratio to 75% only decreased my annual takeaway by like $400. It wasn't that big of an effect. Oh no, sorry, I take that back. Whoop, completely wrong. Why is that? That's 7,000. Oh, that's huge. Okay, so by increasing my expense ratio to 75%, I now have $5,000 less in annual takeaway. So that is a point about making sure your expenses are decreased significantly. Okay, so now let's go into this number here. So 5%. Okay, so all this is good. Okay, so now I'm going to assume that there's no appreciation here because I sort of want to see what this looks like. Expenses. Yeah, so that's good. Okay, so this is not that great of an opportunity because my debt servicing. Okay, so what I want to do now is go and see. So if I go back to 50, my debt servicing is a lot. Okay, so I can actually go up to about 65%. Okay, so I can go up to about 65% on my expenses, where it still is an okay opportunity. Okay, so that's where I want to run it. Okay, so now one of the things that I want to also consider is how much did I have to invest? Okay, for this 5%, am I investing 100,000? Am I investing 250,000, $500,000, 1 million? Okay, how long do I have to leave my cash in there before I get my capital back. So for example, a lot of these LPGPs are, or percentage shareholders are doing like 3 to 5 years. Some of them I've seen are even longer at like 7 years. Okay, so that's a long stretch. So how long do I need to leave my capital in there? Because ideally, I want my capital back as quickly as possible, like 1 to 3 years at the most, right? Okay. And then the other thing that I always want to consider is, am I better off doing private lending with this cash, right? So it's not like missed opportunity, because usually if this is a good opportunity, you'll figure out a way to make it happen along with private lending, right? Usually getting into an LPGP or shareholders, there's more potential for a higher return than what you would get in a private lend, potentially. Okay, so private lending is a completely different strategy, but it's one that I look at saying, okay, well, am I better off just doing a private lend instead of putting money in? Okay, so that's where we get into this part of the calculation here. Okay, so this one here, I'm saying, okay, if my original capital in is 200,000 and I have to lock it in for 1 year. So that means after that 1 year, I get all my capital back. Okay, and then I can go and do something else with it. Okay, so that's one of the things where I think, okay, well, I can do this opportunity first, and then in 1 year get my money back, and then go do private lending, right? Like sit on that cash, right? So the green is numbers that I can play around with. Okay, so now based on the numbers of, that we just ran, if I put in 200,000, locked it in for a year, and then I got all my money back, my ROI for that 1 year would just be 2%. So it's not that great of a return, but then every single year after that, it's infinite return. Okay, so you need to sort of balance that out, saying, okay, is it worth it for me to, for 1 year, just take 2%? And then every single year after that, get infinite return because I have no money in. Okay, so the infinite return is a great thing to get if you can get it. Okay, so it may make sense to say, hey, you know what, for the first year, I'll take a lower return because then after that, I get infinite return, for the life of the project, right? Okay, so ideally what I'd like to do is make sure that whatever my return is for that 1 year, it covers my debt servicing to have this 200,000. So that would be the minimum. And then saying, hey, you know what? If I can get the same thing that I would get from private lending and get infinite return forever, then that is like dreamland, right? Okay. So if I was to take this money, this 200,000, and do private lending with it, what do the numbers look like? So 200,000, if I do private lending, let's say it's starting at 12, okay? Starting at 12, okay? So keep that in mind, it's starting at 12. So as your interest rate goes up, this is interest only payments. As it goes up, it actually will increase in your profit, okay? And this is per year. So now, so at 12%, I would make $24,000, okay? That's pretty decent, right? So now keep in mind, this does not include capital gains, okay? So yeah, the capital gains inclusion, you have to pay capital gains on this money. Okay. That actually would be interesting. I should do that as another calculation another day. Okay, so based on this number, I would have, okay, so if I was to compare investing the 200K into the business or to a property, I would need to be in this for 5.5 years before I see the equivalent profit that I would see from private lending. Okay, so even though it's infinite return, okay, which is great, I would have to wait about 5.5 years. So what that means to me is that, let's just say we buy a business and then we turn around and we sell it in 5 years and we only make the same amount that we purchased it for. I would basically just break even as the equivalent of our private land. Okay. So one, we would have to sell it at, 3 or 4 times multiplier to be worth my time, or I would need to be able to make a higher return on this, like this, instead of the 2.14%, I would need to make a higher return, right? Okay, so that's how I would run the numbers there. All right. Yeah. So I would then go back over here and then calculate, what percentage would make sense for me to invest into this, right? Like maybe my takeaway here, does it make sense if I have a higher takeaway? Yeah, it does make sense, right? So now if I asked for a 10% LP, my takeaway would be 8,500 on this opportunity. And that would mean, compared to private lending, I would only need to be in it for 3 years, right? I would make about 4.3% on the ROI in the first year, and then every single year would be infinite return. And then I would make the same amount as my private lend in 3 years, which is not that great, right? Because then after the third year, I would have to wait another 3 years in order to make this money. But after the first year, I would have already gotten my money back. So I would actually be able to make this amount, the 4.3%, plus if I just then took that money and then did private lending at 12%, then I would still also make 24 a year, 24,000 a year. Right. So yeah, there's a balancing of, can you do both? And it's really just do this first. So you sort of get your golden egg hatching and making more golden eggs. Okay. And then going into the private lend or some other strategy where you make this 24,000 additional per year. Okay. That is it for me today. Thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, any feedback, please let me know through the QR code. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a super awesome day.